In the spring of 2022, Anna Peterson, whose name has been changed, a simple young woman, was on a business trip with a few colleagues to Denver, Colorado. They stayed at a rather large hotel in the city center. A building that looked modern on the outside but had a certain old-fashioned charm when you stepped inside. Anna was assigned room 412 on the 4th floor. The room was clean and comfortable, with a window overlooking the city skyline. After unpacking, she felt a bit tired after the long flight. On the first night at the hotel, Anna went to bed early, hoping to get a good night's sleep to be refreshed for the next day's work. She turned off the lights, and the room fell into quiet darkness. As she was drifting off to sleep, Anna suddenly heard a faint sound coming from the adjacent room. Room 414. It was crying, the crying of a child. The sound was very small, weak, like muffled sobbing. Anna slightly frowned. She thought perhaps there was a couple with a small child in the room next door. She tried to ignore the crying and fall asleep. However, the crying kept coming in intermittent bursts, like whimpering. It wasn't too loud, but it was enough to make Anna uncomfortable and unable to sleep peacefully. She listened to the crying for about 15 minutes. Then it stopped. Anna sighed in relief and finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Anna met her colleagues at breakfast. She mentioned hearing a baby crying in the room next door last night. "Oh, really?" David, whose name has been changed, an older colleague, said, "Probably just a family on a business trip with their young child." Anna nodded. She thought that was the most logical explanation. The first day of work went quite smoothly. In the evening, Anna returned to her hotel room, feeling more tired than the night before. She just wanted to go to sleep. She got ready for bed, turned off the lights, and lay in bed again in the quiet darkness. And then, it started again. The crying, from the adjacent room 414. The crying of a child, still weak and sad like the night before. Anna felt uneasy. She hoped the crying would stop quickly. But it continued, intermittent, persistent. She began to feel more disturbed. The crying didn't just make it hard for her to sleep, it also carried a strange sense of sadness and loneliness. It wasn't angry crying, it was crying full of pain. Like the crying of a child who had been abandoned. Anna lay there, listening to the crying in the darkness. A feeling of unease began to creep into her mind. Why was this child crying at this hour? Why was the crying so sad? And then, a frightening thought suddenly flashed in Anna's mind. Was there really a child in the room next door? The business trip to Denver, Colorado, which seemed ordinary, began to turn into a strange and terrifying experience for Anna in room 412. The invisible neighbor in room 414 had appeared, and its crying would haunt Anna's subsequent nights. The crying from the adjacent room 414 continued regularly every night, sowing unease into Anna's mind. The more she heard the crying, the more shivers she felt. It didn't sound like a normal baby crying. It carried a deep sadness and a chilling loneliness. Anna tried to find an explanation. Perhaps the baby was sick? Perhaps its parents weren't there? She tried knocking gently on the wall separating her room from room 414, hoping to make a noise so the people in the next room would know the noise was disturbing her. She knocked gently. Tap, tap. The crying suddenly stopped for a moment. Anna held her breath, listening. Then, the crying continued, still weak and sad, as if the people in the next room hadn't heard her knocking. Or didn't care. The nightmare of crying at night grew bigger. Anna slept less, and when she slept, She often had strange dreams about a child crying in the dark. Anna's colleagues noticed her fatigue during the day. "Are you okay, Anna?" David asked. "You look so tired." Anna just said that she had trouble sleeping at the hotel. She didn't want to tell them about the strange crying, afraid they would think she was hallucinating. However, one night, when the crying from room 414 echoed again, Anna couldn't stand it anymore. Fear and curiosity drove her. She quietly got out of bed, went to the wall separating her from room 414. She pressed her ear against the wall, trying to listen more clearly. The crying sounded closer, clearer. It didn't seem to be coming from inside the room, but right against the wall. Anna felt a sudden cold draft radiating from the wall. The coldness was very different, very deep, as if it penetrated her bones. Anna shivered. She backed away from the wall, her heart pounding in her chest. The crying continued. She stared intently at the wall, feeling as if it wasn't just a wall. It was the boundary between her world and something else. She gathered all her courage, knocked harder on the wall. Knock, knock, knock. The crying suddenly stopped. A sudden and terrifying silence fell over the room. Anna held her breath, listening. There was no sound from room 414. No answer. No footsteps. Only the terrifying silence. She stood there in the dark, staring at the wall, feeling as if someone was listening to her from the other side. After a long while, when there was no sound, Anna slowly returned to bed. She lay there, wide awake, filled with fear. The crying had stopped, but the fear had not. The thin wall separating her from the adjacent room now became a frightening boundary between her and something supernatural. She knew that something was wrong with room 414. Something evil or sad was residing there. And that crying wasn't the crying of a normal baby. The nightmare of crying at night had sown seeds of fear in Anna's mind. And they were gradually sprouting. After several consecutive nights of hearing crying from room 414 without explanation, Anna couldn't bear it anymore. Fear and fatigue had left her almost exhausted. On the morning of the fourth day of her business trip, Anna decided to go down to the front desk, talk to the staff, and find out about room 414. She went to the front desk. The day shift staff member, a middle-aged woman with a friendly face, smiled and greeted her. "Good morning, miss," the staff member said. "How can I help you?" "Good morning," Anna said, her voice slightly trembling. "I'm in room 412. I'd like to ask about the room next to me." Room 414. The front desk staff member looked at her computer, checking information about room 414. "Yes, room 414, the staff member said. "That room is vacant." Anna felt a sudden cold shiver run down her spine. "Vacant?" she asked, her voice full of surprise and fear. "You mean, there's no one staying in that room?" "Yes, ma'am," the front desk staff member said, looking at the computer screen. "Room 414 has not been booked by any guest this entire week. Only the room across the hall from you, room 415, is occupied by guests." Anna felt her head spin. If room 414 was vacant, where was the crying she heard every night coming from? But I hear a baby crying from that room every night," Anna said, her voice almost a whisper. "The crying of a baby." The front desk staff member looked at Anna with a puzzled expression. Her face showed skepticism. "A baby crying? Are you sure you're not mistaken? Sometimes sounds can travel from other rooms." "I'm not mistaken," Anna said, her voice slightly higher. "The crying is very clear. And it's coming from room 414. I even knocked on the wall. It stopped for a while and then started crying again. The front desk staff member looked at Anna strangely. It seemed she thought Anna was hallucinating. Ms. Miller, the staff member said gently. Perhaps you are tired from your business trip. I can move you to another room if you wish. Anna didn't want to move rooms. She wanted to know the truth about room 414. I don't want to move rooms. Anna said. I just want to know. Why am I hearing crying from a vacant room? The front desk staff member sighed lightly. I don't know how to explain it. Ma'am, according to our system, room 414 is completely vacant. Perhaps it's just sounds echoing from somewhere else. However, Anna knew that explanation was not satisfactory. The crying was very clear, and it was coming from room 414. She felt a deep sense of dread. If no one was in room 414, then who was crying in there? Or, what was crying in there? The horrifying truth. The room next door to her wasn't just vacant. It was haunted, and that crying wasn't the crying of a living child. Anna stood there, trembling all over. Her business trip had turned into a nightmare. She knew she needed proof. Proof of the horrifying truth hidden in the vacant room 414. The truth that room 414 was vacant, yet Anna could still hear crying, sent her into utter panic. She knew she was facing something supernatural. After talking to the front desk, Anna adamantly requested to review the security camera footage from the 4th floor. She believed the camera had captured something unusual. The front desk staff member was initially hesitant, but faced with Anna's insistence and her face pale with fear, she agreed. She called the hotel manager. The hotel manager, Mr. Robert Hayes, whose name has been changed, was a stern middle-aged man. He listened to Anna's story with a rather skeptical expression, but agreed to let her review the 4th floor security camera footage. They went together to the hotel's security room. The room was small and cramped, filled with surveillance monitors displaying images from cameras throughout the hotel. Mr. Hayes opened the surveillance system, found the camera in the 4th floor hallway. At the time Anna reported hearing the crying, especially at night. Anna stood beside Mr. Hayes, her heart pounding. She was scared, but also determined to know the truth. The footage from the 4th floor hallway camera appeared on the screen. It showed the empty hallway, with closed room doors. The hallway was quite dark at night, with only faint light from the ceiling lamps. They reviewed the footage from the first night. The hallway was empty. No one walked by. To the time Anna reported hearing the crying, the screen still just showed the empty hallway. Mr. Hayes looked at Anna with a skeptical expression. Ms. Miller, you see, there's nothing unusual. Anna felt disappointed, but she knew she had heard the crying. Keep watching, sir, Anna said. Watch the next nights. They watched the footage from the second night. Still the empty hallway. Then, around midnight, the time when Anna heard the crying become clearer, their eyes were glued to the screen. And then, it appeared, right in front of the door to room 414, where no one should have been. A shadow slowly materialized. It was a small black shadow, the shape of a child. It wasn't walking. It was hovering slightly above the floor. It had no legs visible. The black shadow was very blurry. Details hard to make out, but its small shape was unmistakable. The baby's black shadow stood there, in front of the door to room 414. Then, it began to make strange movements. It swayed gently, and seemed to emit some kind of sound. Anna and Mr. Hayes held their breath. Although they couldn't hear audio from the security camera footage, only video. Seeing the shape of the swaying baby's black shadow, Anna knew that was the crying she had heard. The baby's black shadow stood there, in front of the door to room 414. For a few minutes, it seemed to be staring at the closed door, or looking down at the floor. It would appear and disappear intermittently, sometimes looking a bit clearer, sometimes fading like smoke. Then, it slowly glided away, moving a short distance down the hallway, and then completely vanished into the darkness. Anna and Mr. Hayes sat there, staring at the screen. Both were pale with fear. "My God," Mr. Hayes mumbled, his voice trembling. "What is that?" They rewound the footage, watching the scene of the baby's black shadow crying in front of the door to room 414 over and over again. They watched the subsequent nights, and the same scene reappeared every night. The baby's black shadow appeared in front of the door to room 414 around midnight, cried for a few minutes, then disappeared. Undeniable evidence. Something supernatural was haunting the fourth floor of this hotel, especially the area in front of the door to room 414. A black shadow, the shape of a child, crying every night in front of a vacant room. The fourth floor security camera had recorded the horrifying truth about Anna's invisible neighbor. The discovery of the crying baby's black shadow in the security camera footage shocked both Anna and the hotel management. Mr. Hayes' initial skepticism had completely vanished, replaced by fear and confusion. They knew they couldn't keep this a secret. However, they also didn't want to make it public, fearing it would panic guests and harm the hotel's reputation. Mr. Hayes contacted some people experienced in supernatural phenomena, local history researchers, to learn about the hotel's past. They discovered that this hotel, despite its modern appearance, was built on the foundation of an older building, and in the past, tragic stories had occurred at this location, including accidents and heartbreaking deaths. One story specifically involved a fire that happened many years ago in an old building nearby, where a mother and her young child tragically perished. The child's spirit was said to still linger, searching for its mother. There were also stories about strange things happening in this hotel previously. Reports of strange noises, shadows seen in the hallways or in rooms. The connection between the tragic stories from the past and the crying baby's black shadow in the footage was clear. Perhaps, the spirit of the child who died in the fire or some other tragedy found its way to this hotel. Or the spirit was trapped here for some reason, and it haunted the area in front of room 414. Crying every night, seeking help or peace. Why did it specifically appear in front of room 414? Perhaps, that room had some special significance in the past. Or it was where the child's spirit felt close to something it had lost. This gloomy explanation sent shivers down Anna's spine. She knew she hadn't imagined everything. She had witnessed the existence of an unfortunate spirit. Mr. Hayes and the hotel management decided they would not rent out room 414 and the adjacent rooms for a while. They hoped that might lessen the haunting. For Anna, the fear of the crying baby's black shadow would forever haunt her. She had completed her business trip and returned home, but those nights at the hotel had become a nightmare. She knew that hotel in Denver was not just a place to stay. It was a haunted place, where the spirit of an unfortunate child still lingered. The truth about the ghost in the hotel was real, and it was recorded by the security camera. Undeniable evidence of the existence of supernatural things. Anna knew she would never forget that crying, and the image of the crying baby's black shadow in front of the door to room 414. It is a reminder that, even in seemingly safe and normal spaces, Darkness and unfortunate spirits can still lurk. And we never truly know who is in the room next door to us. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and recorded evidence, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.